Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you guys could join us today. For those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X, we're glad to have you all with us. We're going to connect with our friends over on Instagram now so they can be a part of our show for today. Then we're going to connect with our friends over on Amazon. Now, introduce you guys to today's guest. If you guys are new to us on the platforms, we're so glad you all could be with us. And we welcome those tuning in on Amazon Live now for Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new, make sure you guys do hit that follow button. You see it either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the book by our next guest. We're so excited to welcome author Denise Haynes to our broadcast today. She's the author of this book called Talent Show. You guys can see, you can get it there in print or the Kindle edition. I want to talk to Denise not only about the characters she's been able to share in this book, but also what it's been like for her to be able to see the way that readers are already responding to the book. And of course, for you guys joining us on Amazon, if you don't have it already, you can go ahead and click and get it for yourself. For those joining us on social, we'll let you guys know how to be able to do the same thing. Denise, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Denise, this is very exciting. I mean, the reviews are already starting to come in for a talent show. What has it been like for you as the author to see the way that readers are responding to it?
Well, it's been very rewarding, actually. Uh, I've had lots of positive feedback, not all of it from people who were from that type of family.
Hmm.
Actually, one person was the only child, and said to me that it made him think about how his parents met and what it was like for them before he came along and how he changed their relationships. And in fact, he wondered who they really were when they
Hmm.
were his age and so on.
Yeah.
The feedback's been great, and it's shown me that people are appreciating the different levels
Hmm.
within the book.
Right.
Um, yeah, so that's really been great.
Denise, I'm so glad you said that because it brings up something interesting for me as a reader, having not
Mhm.
discussed this with you before. Because I kind of I'm a single guy myself, but I saw the book kind of as two components. There's that great William Shakespeare quote, "All the world's a stage," right? And it really reminded me of when I was
Mhm.
reading Talent Show of how all of us play our roles. And
Yeah,
some of them are more hyphenated than others. For
right.
myself, being single, for others it's married, those having children. And you wonder as you keep adding titles or things to your life, not only what you leave behind, but also how people see you. What was
Yeah.
it like for you to kind of think about that with these characters of not only who they were before others came into their lives, but also how things would have been different for them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you've hit on, I think, something that's very central in the novel, which is that, the person that you see before you is really a reflection of many things that you don't see. A
Yeah.
reflection of the family that they came from,
Mhm.
a reflection of the people they live with, and so on. And so for me, I would say that I wrote the book as it came to me. As
Mhm.
the story came, I wrote it. I started during the pandemic. I decided I always wrote, and I decided this is the time to sit and really just write a novel and pull some things that I'd written before and so on, because there wasn't much else going on. And
Yeah.
so it seemed like now or never. And
Yeah.
as I began to write, I began to realize that uh, it was sort of coming to me, and I began to realize that it was a story that I had seen around me through friends, through family, through acquaintances, through colleagues, and through my own personal experience. So it really gave me a different perspective on family and life and people and so on as I was telling the story. So
Yeah.
I would say it came quite naturally. I let it come as it came because I didn't have any particular agenda.
Okay.
I just decided I would just tell the story.
Right.
Yeah.
So that I'm so glad you shared that part with us. So for you then, who was the first character that appeared for you?
The first character would be Eddie, the
Okay.
narrator of the first section.
Hmm.
Yeah, he came through loud and clear. And
Yeah.
it's something I always wondered about. You know, women have a particular role in a family. And I mean, dads are so much more involved these days, which is a great thing.
Right.
But back in the day, and even still being so involved, the one who, has the kid and sort of is, I guess I would say, perhaps the primary nurturer. or something along those lines.
Mhm.
Uh, I just always noticed that men sometimes felt left out of the picture. It was like, yeah, this is all going on, and I know this is my kid and stuff. What do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
And so I began to wonder what it must be like to be a father with so many children and to see your wife doing all that she does, and especially back in that era.
Mhm.
And and so he just I began to think about his voice and think about him and think about his view of life and things. And I thought, you know what? This guy has a lot to say.
Yeah.
So I just let him talk. Yeah.
To that point in chapter 16, as you were talking just now,
Mhm.
Denise, and I see you guys coming in over there on YouTube, LinkedIn, and on Facebook. If you guys have any questions or comments for Denise, make sure you guys put those in the chat. I'll be monitoring those. But it's interesting now that I know that the story just kind of came to you and you let it evolve. You began
Mhm.
chapter 16 by saying, by the character being able to say to us, in telling this story, I follow the thread of my memory, but as I do so, other random memories and realities present, reminding me of the smaller details of my life. And that, of course, is Eddie being able to speak. I love the fact that he says as a husband and father, because it does remind us, as you just said, that he was someone before then. But I also love how observant Eddie is. And us guys, I've always been observant myself, Denise. Us guys, we don't get a lot of credit for being observant, you
That's
know.
true. I would agree
But
with that. Yeah.
Pamela is someone that it seemed like Eddie really seemed to learn something from, and our audience will kind of get an idea. And one thing about Pamela being, as Eddie even refers to her as, as a bird. So basically, being able to spread her wings and to fly. What was it like for you to see how people like Eddie could admire people like Pamela, but also realize how different their circumstances were? Because Eddie at this point didn't have those abilities because of his circumstances and even his responsibilities.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true. And I think that even more because he couldn't fly, he
Hmm.
just loved seeing one of his children with that ability
Yeah.
and bringing that particular lightness that she brought to life.
Hmm.
And I think that it allowed him, parents live vicariously a little through their children, even
Yeah.
when they say they're not doing it.
Right.
So I think it allowed him to experience a kind of freedom through Pamela. And in
Hmm.
telling his story, I'm hoping that, well, the effect was that it came back to him, that freedom came back to him, and that others could identify with that character, that personality of Pamela. Because I think we all have met a Pamela, or we have a Pamela as a friend or a family
Hmm.
member, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And Denise, I think too, to that point, I was just, as you were talking, that I was thinking about the story. And again, for those of you not joining us on Amazon, of course, you can either click the link that's with this broadcast to come over to Amazon, or if you guys are on Amazon, of course, the book is right there. You can just click on it. But I think it goes to a bigger point too there, Denise, and that is just like in a talent show, everyone's role is different. One thing I also appreciate is how Eddie was able to realize that the differences in his children, whatever those may be, and not try to make them all be the same thing. What was it like for you to see as the story unfolded to you, his attention to knowing them individually, but also recognizing what their gifts were?
Yeah. Well, I'll share a little something with you about that.
Okay.
That's a little bit based on my own dad,
Okay.
who was that particular aspect. Some of Eddie is based on the dad of some of my friends
Hmm.
and cousins and uncles and so on. But that particular part was very much a little piece of my dad. He was a very reserved man, but he would sit on the front porch. He never really watched television unless there was sports on. And he would call you, and then he would call you, and when he called you, you would know that he would be calling you to talk to you about something that he had noticed about you. And
Hmm.
so he was that type of presence, very quiet, very observant, because sometimes he'd call you and he'd say, so tell me about this tennis match that you played, or tell me about this thing that you did, and you'd be wondering, that was a while back, a few months ago. But then he would work up to his point, and you'd realize he was calling you to tell you something about you. And
Mm.
very often it would be to emphasize how you could approach the situation differently the next time, or how well you approached it this time, or what you may have seen or what you may not have seen, and what he saw in the situation from afar because he knew you. So that was really a little personal touch
Mm.
in that aspect.
Mm.
It's very
I
clever
love
to pick that up. Yeah,
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 I love that, and you actually, because I was hoping you shared something like that with us, because that's another thing I think that made this first part of chapter 16 stand out. Because I was curious, as Eddie was saying and telling this story, I have followed the thread of my memory. And I was wondering who kind of was inspiration for that, for the memories that he was that he was sharing.
yeah.
So I'm sure that, yeah, so that's cool. What has it been like for you now, Denise, to see the way that you're, because you mentioned even people who don't know you now are responding to the book. Reviews are already coming in. For those who um, have known you, was this a surprise for them that the talent show is here, or was it something they would have expected?
Well, I think half and half. I think everyone who knows me knows that I write. I think
Okay.
even when I was an attorney before, and even when I was an attorney, my friends knew that I was writing.
Hmm.
Even when I was teaching, especially when I was teaching, my friends knew that I was writing. So I think maybe people who didn't know me professionally, or people who didn't know me for a long time, may have been surprised. I remember one lady who is a distant relative, lives in another island in the Caribbean, and she sent me an email saying, "I didn't know you were a writer." And I said, "Well, I don't think I've ever been anything else." But then when
Yeah.
she thought about it, she said, "No," but she knew me as an attorney. And she said, "Well, actually, yes, when in your writing as an attorney, I could maybe, if I think about it, see that, yeah, there were other influences in your writing which made it different from typical legal writing." So I think most people would not have been surprised, but
Yeah.
I think that I never told anyone I was writing a book except my immediate family, my husband, my children, and my close friends.
Yeah.
So to see the book appear, I think that may have been a little bit of a, huh, okay, she did it,
Yeah. She
moment
did.
for people, yeah.
I want to say hello to Marie. Hello to you over there on IG. Glad you could be with us. I think it's pronounced Pepkai. Hello to you. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. And Chris is joining us over on Facebook. Chris says, "Thank you for shedding a thoughtful light and perspective on the male experience, looking through that thick wall of stoic emotional neutrality that every man builds himself brick by brick. Thank you, thank you, thank you." That's very nice, Chris. That
Yeah,
is one of the interesting things about the book, though, Denise, is that you are able to show not only that we are multidimensional, but even in what you just shared in that experience. See, that's what I meant earlier about some people would only look at you and only think of Denise as the attorney, right?
yeah, yeah.
And now they have another name, another way, another lens to be able to think about you. Is that kind of what you, now that the book is out and the stories kind of unfolded, Denise? Is that one of the things that you hope readers pick up on, that all of us are really in our own talent show, and there are
Right.
different roles that we all have to play?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. 100%. Yeah. That we all have our roles to play, and you should pick up that mic and play your role, show who you
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
because it's important, because it brings depth to life, it brings texture, it brings interest, it brings a dimension to life.
Hmm.
If we were all the same, good grief, I don't know what anyone would write about. So,
Right.
yeah,
And I think, to take that a step further, Denise, I think the book shows, and this is just again me as a reader saying this, that not only do all of us have a role, even if it's a role that's not understood. I mean, that's something again that goes back to Eddie. Even if it's a role that's not fully understood, being able
mhm.
to embrace it and to try. Again, it goes back to Pamela too. Just like you did with, writing this novel. Is that all something that also inspires you?
Yes, of course. Even Eddie, if you think about Eddie, on the external view of Eddie was that Eddie was a father, a provider for a large family. People knew him professionally as through what he did. But how many of them knew that Eddie would write himself? And how many of them knew that Eddie was sort of collecting files mentally on his children and on life? And I think it's something that a lot of people do, including
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
including myself.
Yeah.
And of course, as an attorney, there is a strict confidentiality that you're bound by. So I've never really put anything about my clients into anything I've written. But it's caused me certainly to go off on little thoughts about people and life. And even sometimes in the supermarket, in one aisle, you'd hear someone say something, and I would resist the temptation to turn around and have a look at the person, because when you see that face, it can spoil it, or it can improve it, but it can change it anyway. And I don't want it to change, because I want that to be another piece of the puzzle of human life and people and so on. So even for myself, there's so many sides to me. People, my husband's constantly saying that, my children are constantly saying that. And people who know me know this, but most other people see me as X or Y and so on. So, well, now that talent show is out, they know for sure that I'm a writer as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love this one line that's on the back of the book, Denise. Everyone has their own and pain, and often hidden in the business of family life until family members speak honestly. I think being able to know that, even for myself, there were no other artists in my family or writers in my family, but my parents always encouraged me, even though they didn't know what would come from it. I still had that encouragement, and I thought about that with talent show. Sometimes that's all we need, is just that freedom to have that runway and to
That's right.
fly, not knowing where it could lead us. So, are you
Exactly.
feeling the pressure right now, Denise? Now that this book is out, I know you mentioned, of course, writing it in COVID. Are you feeling the pressure of a follow up?
Well, the follow-up is almost finished. Not,
Oh,
not,
nice.
not, not that my second novel is a follow-up in any way to Talent Show. It's quite different,
Okay.
but that's almost finished. Uh, and I should say that I had notes for 3 novels, so I know there'll at least be 3, and
There you
we'll see after that. So no, and I once, when I was a teacher, there was someone in my department who published quite a lot. He was always publishing. And one day I asked him, I said, "How'd you do it?" And he said to me, "Well, don't publish number 1 until you have number 2 in solid note form.
go. Wow.
Otherwise, you'll feel terrible pressure and you'll get blocked." And I've followed his advice, and actually, it's quite true. So, from the moment that talent show was accepted, and we were dealing with things like artwork and cover design and so on, I allowed myself to start the other one.
Love
So,
that.
no, I don't feel too much pressure. Although, excuse me, my editor at the moment may be thinking, "Oh, she was supposed to have sent me a finished first draft by now." But I'll
Right.
have that done in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, for sure.
Love that. Well, Denise, so glad we had a chance to chat again. Everyone, Denise Haynes has been our guest. The book is
Mhm.
called Talent Show. It's out here in print, as well as a Kindle edition here on Amazon. So for you guys joining us on the Amazon platform, you see it here on this side or down below. Those joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, you'll find the link that will bring you guys over to Amazon to get it for yourself. For those tuning in on X, you'll see it in the comment section. Those on Instagram, we're going to put it in our stories. Denise, how can our audience stay connected with you?
My website, it's denisehaynesauthor.com. And I'm also on Facebook. And they'll find me on Instagram as TriniRed1,
Okay.
which is an allusion to my place of birth,
Got
Trinidad
you.
and Tobago. Yeah, yeah.
Got it.
So
I'll make
they
sure.
can stay connected with me. LinkedIn as well. I'm also on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay. I'll make sure that we get you tagged over there. Congratulations to you again, Denise, and thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it.
And Cyrus, thank you so much. It's been a great chat, and thanks
Thank,
for having me.
Hey, glad to do it. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Hello to you, Ellen. I see you over there on IG. The replay will be up, Ellen, so you'll be able to catch it there. Until next time, everyone, you all have a great one. We'll speak to you soon. Take care.